Well, being
You are
respectful
now
of folks'
live.
time, we are now live. Excellent. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Want to welcome everybody to the Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee. Tonight, Wednesday, December 4th, we are getting going at 6:04 p.m. and joined by our colleagues and faithful group of folks. Deacon Lyles, Acting Captain Hubbard, good evening. Chief of Staff Montgomery. We'll be joined hopefully by some more community members as we proceed. But wanted to wish everybody a happy holidays and Thanksgiving, and good to see everyone. We have been playing a little catch up, given the holiday and a couple conflicts these last couple of weeks. We've had mixed participation, kind of leading to a little bit of mixed, fragmented conversations. However, we have moved a few things forward, but we did pin and flag a couple of things that still needed further discussion that we really wanted to continue with the folks here around the table, and didn't want to further discussions with very limited participation. I know last week me and Acting Captain Hubbard got on and just kind of mused and shared sweet nothings with each other for a couple minutes, just to see if anybody would join us on Thanksgiving Eve. But at that check-in, we did have a chance to check in briefly and talk about a couple of the deliverables, a couple of the things, and kind of recapping. And we thought it would be best, especially as we're going into this new into this holiday season. We only got a limited number of meetings left for the year, to perhaps do a little bit of and correct me if I'm wrong, Captain Hubbard. I think we also want to kind of just take a step back and kind of look at what we've accomplished so far, kind of what things what loose ends we still have to tie off, and then also kind of set some goals for ourselves between now and the new year, before we pick this work back up come January. So I'm not sure if I'm missing anything, or if anybody has any other announcements or anything they would like to share, but I think that's kind of where we left off. So it's kind of just taking a step back and also just reviewing what we have accomplished, move forward, because we have covered quite a few MORs going down these lists. And so, but I know there's a couple that we maybe wanted to revisit, and or just tie up some loose ends. So I'll leave it at that for any questions, or if not, I'll pass it to you, Acting Captain Hubbard, and see where we could pick up from here.
Sure, let me share my screen here. All right, can you see all my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So to recap where we've been, I would say the first part of our meetings were focused on the mission, vision, values, preamble, which we have dialed in. And when we launched into actually talking about the manual rules sections, we really stopped and had many discussions of conduct towards others' demeanor. And this is the final product. I'll go ahead and read it. And I'll just, before I launch into this, I was not at the meeting 2 weeks ago. I was out of town. And so I had someone take notes for me, and I fixed all the items that you all talked about, but I did earmark the things that where we put a pin in, and we're going to launch into discussion, I assume, tonight. And they're pretty heavy, so we might not get through all of them certainly tonight, but we made progress. So this is conduct towards others' demeanor. Members shall perform their duties attentively and courteously, maintaining a professional tone and tenor. That was requested by Ms. Peterson in all interactions. This includes avoiding rude, threatening, harsh, insulting, insolent, or demeaning language. They shall preserve a demeanor reflecting respect and restraint, regardless of provocation. Members shall treat superior officers, subordinates, and peers with respect. They shall be courteous and civil at all times in their relationships and one another, and shall avoid any inappropriate conduct. All persons except the very youthful and those known by the member or employee shall always be addressed by their appropriate title, followed by their last name. When on duty and in the presence of other superior officers shall be referred to by rank title. Members and employees shall attend to requests from the public quickly and accurately, avoiding unnecessary referral to other parts of the department. Orders from superior to subordinate members and employees shall be given civilly without profane or derogatory language. All members and employees are expected to show equal respect and consideration for every community member, regardless of their status or role. This includes addressing individuals with respectful titles such as sir or ma'am, and avoiding slang or overly casual language that could detract from professionalism. Members are expected to demonstrate, we got rid of empathy and just went into kindness, courtesy, professionalism, promptness, responsiveness, helpfulness, and active listening. Additionally, they are expected to uphold principles of procedural justice, including giving a voice to others, fostering trust, showing respect, and remaining neutral, especially when interacting with individuals under stress, whether as victims, witnesses, or subjects of a crime. Members are expected to model this behavior consistently, avoiding actions that suggest they are above the law. So the big main changes there, of course, on the top is tone and tenor, but we did spend, I think now 2 meetings talking about empathy. Are we okay with mainly this section right here?
I am. I think this is it's a lot more. It reads clear, and kind of takes a little bit of the subjectivity out of it. How do you feel, Deacon Lyles? I know we went back and forth.
Yeah, I think
about using this, but I think this gets straight
yeah,
to the point.
I don't want to belabor it any longer. I just know that if we left empathy in there, somebody's gonna take us to the court and we'll lose it. We'll lose on that, because you can be a phenomenal police officer, but you don't have to empathize with the people in the condition they're in. So you just don't. You got to be professional, but you ain't got to feel like they feel.
Yeah.
And that's just human nature,
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate all of that feedback. And certainly, Captain, I think this gets straight to the point and kind of captures that without kind of removing some of this ambiguity or subjectiveness, and kind of, I think we're overthinking it a little bit. And so this read pretty straightforward. So I'm good with this.
Yeah, I would like to just put on the table so folks could know that, we're not being Pollyannish, and we understand how the streets can be. In certain arrest situations, and I'm sure, police officers, if they haven't been in it, they've witnessed it. It could be kind of harsh, the language, when you're trying to get somebody's attention. Now, if you've never arrested anyone in a difficult situation, it's not always, sir, please put your hands up, get down on the ground. That's just not how it is. So hope we understand that, because you're going to get some pushback from, I know this has to go to the association. When they read this, that's one of the things that's going to pop up to them, because they know if you're dealing with certain folk who are career criminals, they're not listening to you if you saying, sir, put your hands up, sir, get on the ground. You gotta raise your voice. I've heard all kind of things, so I'll just say that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Now, is this, and now it has me thinking too, with that, given that point, Captain, is this, if you scroll up a little bit, now, is this specific to just general interactions? This is towards each other in terms of colleagues, with public? Can we get some clarity on that?
Sure. It's both. So starting right here where it says all members and employees, This was a section that we added because for whatever reason, this manual of rules only addressed internal interactions with employees. But common practice for us, regardless of the definition, is when an officer's demeanor is unbecoming, we use this section to sustain them. So now there's this whole other section right here that is more specific to addressing the community.
Is there a way to encompass, think forward, or kind of anticipate what the point that Deacon Lyles just made right now? I mean,
I'm kind of confused. Are we saying the top half of this document is pretty much directed to internal interactions?
Mainly this section right here, yes. We did alter the top part a little just to keep it somewhat neutral, but when you look at these bullet points, talk about our internal interactions.
was that the original intent of this MOR?
Apparently it was. I couldn't find the history behind this, but when you read it, it just dealt it. One can argue that it's like, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with how I treat the community. This is all about treating each other with respect.
Is there any other MORs or areas specific to how folks interact with community, or would this continue? We identified this as the most appropriate place to put that.
This is the most appropriate. Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we just say the section that we're directing at internal communications? We say, say that, and then when we're talking about the public, we use the word public and public interactions. Am I making myself clear? Probably not.
So 2 sections basically. So a new.
Yeah. If, in other words, instead of trying to make this a one,
catch all,
a one size fits all, if the intent is to say membership perform their duties attentively, courtesy, maintaining perfection, tone, and demeanor in all interaction with fellow employees, government, city employees, blah, blah, blah. If that's what that intent was to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say because of what we added, though, that's why it just says all interactions. So it doesn't matter if it's internal or external. Your demeanor needs to be appropriate.
See, what I'm saying. I think your demeanor should be appropriate also. But over the many arrests that I've been involved with, and witnessed, and overheard, and saw, and supervised, I've heard all kind of language out there, and we have to be honest about that. If you, I want to think of a scenario, for example. I mean, would you say a guy, an officer arresting a felon who just shot somebody, and he used profanity, and you overheard it, you're the supervisor out there, would you say that person who used profanity in that arrest should be called up, should be written up in violation of this section?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think so too, and I agree, and I think, but I want to validate what you're saying, Deacon, because
no, you don't have to validate it. I just wanted to flesh out that I'm hearing it, and it's coming from the police department. It's coming from Brian Hubbard.
Yeah.
It's coming from them, because I know for a fact, and I'm sure he knows for a fact, that there's certain scenarios in arrest circumstances where people are called MFs and put your blah, blah, blah hands up and get on your back and all of that. Brian is saying we need to eliminate all of that.
Yes.
Correct?
I say that with confidence. Yes.
Okay, and you think that the union is with you on that?
They are.
All right,
This is not a new thing for us. It really took years to develop, but yes, we
okay.
got to that level. Now, I will say your example may be mitigating or aggravating when we talk about discipline. So we talk about an officer's stress, for example, and they say, "Hey, I was by myself. I was engaging this violent, let's say, person, and I was under
I was
stress.
scared.
I used a curse word." We would still sustain, but it would be whether we aggravate or mitigate based on circumstances. But we draw the line like, no, that's unacceptable.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand OPD's culture, where they want to go, and all right,
Yeah.
Wait,
okay.
can you scroll down a little bit, Captain? Because but to the point though, Deacon, I think one, I think it's great if you are telling us that you are committed to that, to hold that line, right? But I think where it gets a little sketchy or a little gray is, and I'm trying to like imagine a stressful situation, right? Let's say they didn't use derogatory language, they didn't cuss, right? But they weren't necessarily kind or courteous, and maybe it didn't get taken as professional because they were very direct with their demands, right? Now they don't have to say MFer, but they could be say, "Sir, get your ass on the." You know what I'm saying? Like there could be a very more
Listen,
direct way.
trust me, I don't think that's the last thing you want an officer to think about. You want an officer to think about what? The safety of himself and the person that he's arresting. And if you're coming in one of these peerless situations, you want to control the person with your voice and demeanor. You want that person to believe that if they don't do what you say, you're going to take a deadly force. And so soon as they comply, okay, it's not a negotiation. It's get down now. And if they think you a punk, excuse my language, I shouldn't have said that.
I hear you.
If they think you soft,
Mhm.
if they think you soft, and they think they can, you ain't gonna do nothing. I'm running away. You got to use what you can to control the situation. At least that's what I'm thinking. I don't know if law enforcement has changed. I've been out of it for a while.
But
So
there is a way to
yeah.
give forceful directives, clear directives without using derogatory language, right? Or without using race.
It's not about being clear or being direct. It's about belief. It's about making that suspect believe that if they don't do what you say, that it's going to be perilous for them. And if they think you bluffing, if they think you soft, if you don't have that kind of backbone, or they think that about you, then they get away. And that guy who gets away may be the same guy who shot somebody earlier and may shoot somebody later.
But could you accomplish that without using derogatory language?
I couldn't.
And I mean, I guess it's,
I'm just
semantics,
gonna
right?
be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest with you. I could not, and that's what I'm. This is existential memory I'm going on now. I couldn't, and I didn't get a whole lot of personnel complaints. I think I got 2 in my whole career. But I'm just being honest. And Brian, am I off base?
Law enforcement has changed, at least for the Oakland Police Department. We, under no circumstance, condone it.
All right, then I'm going with Brian,
Yeah.
and we don't have to discuss this any longer.
Yeah, I will say though, since we're in the same family of tone is very subjective, and I'll use our dispatchers for example. So our dispatchers, they're short staffed. There's a tremendous amount of calls for service that come in. They are accused of rudeness all the time, and when you're just listening to a recording, one could argue, yes, you are rude, but where's the line of being firm with someone so they can get them off the line or get the information they need to move on to the next caller, which could be an emergency, versus being using the word soft but we're pandering them too much to where it's just tying up the lines. And we see this all the time. Yeah. It's hard.
So to that point though, Captain, if somebody was being very forceful, direct in, in the interest of public safety, in the interest of like, just really like to Deacon Lyle's point, like, no, I have to make sure this person understands that there's no wiggle room here. These are directives clear. I have to be forceful. I have to be, it may be a loud scene, so I may have to yell, or, it may be that level, right?
Yep.
Now, absent of using derogatory language, demeaning language, or anything like that, right? It could still be perceived that they weren't kind or courteous or professional, right?
Yes.
So I still want to be able to maybe tease that out a little bit more, to be like, how do we protect officers to be able to be forceful in a way that protects public safety, protects their own safety, the public's, that the maybe the person that they're arresting or detaining safety, right? In a way that could be forceful. And maybe it doesn't always get perceived as kind or courteous, professional, but there's a little bit of wiggle room or allowance for that, to Deacon's point, because at times on the streets, especially in the streets of Oakland, it may call for that to like secure a situation,
Yeah.
and again, I think I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is a nuance between telling somebody get your ass on the ground now, and however you say it forcefully, to saying get your mother effing ass you on the ground, MNFer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think, it's like,
that's too much. But there's a command presence, and and sometimes that's a discourteous interaction.
However, there also is a lot of science that women officers, and I know like in my field of violence intervention work, right, that doesn't always go well with other males, and other males that are involved in high risk behavior. And sometimes a softer motherly tone, they're actually like, oh yeah, actually that's a lot better, and you get a lot more responsiveness that way.
Yeah, I've seen that also.
So I mean, it's a toss up. And I want to welcome Miss Marsha, our past chair. How are you, dear? It's so good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great holiday. You're joining us as always in fruitful, very thoughtful discussion.
It doesn't look like she hears you.
I don't think so, huh? Miss Marsha, can you hear us? We're all saying hi to you.
No, she doesn't hear you.
Yeah, she doesn't get no audio. Okay, I'll send her something in the chat. Or Chief of Staff Montgomery, if you could maybe send Marsha a text or something in the chat, let her know that we don't have, or she may just be frozen.
I think she's frozen. Oh
no, she just blinked. No, she's not frozen. She's trying to get online. It's not the visuals here, but the audio is not there. And she doesn't know it.
Looks like she's trying to figure it out. All right. Well, when you see the recording later, Miss Marsha, you could see that we're all saying hello and great to see you. And
hi.
There
you go.
Now. Okay.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I just got back from the playground, so I'm good. How's everyone? How was everyone's Thanksgiving?
Well, great, thank you.
Good.
Great to see you.
So we are having a discussion about what does it look like to be empathetic?
Yes, without specific going as far as naming empathy. I don't know if you recall, we've had quite a discussion around that, and about just removing some of the ambiguity around just being very clear and kind of just direct in terms of what we do expect. And so we landed on this paragraph here, and we're just trying to tie the loop on it. But we also started getting into a discussion around, well, there may be times on the field where it calls for an officer to be very forceful or direct in the interest of public safety, in the interest of getting somebody to understand that they mean what they're talking about, and that the stakes are high, and maybe certain very high stake regards, right? And maybe the
stand down, stand back. Yeah, well, that kind of thing.
And there may be language or expressive ways of folks forcefully give those directives in ways that may not always come across as kind and courteous and professional, right? And so if we're saying that they shall always be like this in their interactions with the public, like, how do we build in some protections, or I don't know, like a better words, wiggle room for officers to also feel like they they're able to give those type of forceful things without always feeling to be like, I can just imagine like a house on fire or something, or like something that has to happen at that moment, and somebody's like having to think like, okay, I have to say, please, ma'am, could you, we don't want that either. But so I guess we're trying to find a little bit of that happy balance right there. And then
I think some of this is contextual,
yeah,
because like you said, in those examples, sometimes you have to be just direct and someone may interpret that as rude. But I think I don't believe in this empathy by embodying kindness, but I do believe courtesy, professionalism, the promptness, and all those other adjectives are appropriate. But I don't know what someone may think of as being kind, in a situation that might be fraught with emotions and what have you. So I think to me, I would take out empathy by embodying kindness. But I think you can always be courteous in even high-strung situations, and professional. You can be prompt, you could be responsive, you could be helpful, and you could actively listen. But the others are too subjective. Because courtesy is like, don't call me out of my name, don't call me a B, don't call me an MF, or cursing. To me, or embodying empathy. I'm not putting myself into the shoes of someone who is being restrained for behavior that is actionable by police activity. So that's just me.
Yeah, no, I think we were all in agreement in removing that. And it looks like we'll also remove kindness and just go straight to our expected to demonstrate courtesy.
And I would put professional before courtesy.
Okay.
And in other words, not courtesy, professionalism, but professional, comma, courteous, prompt, professionalism, courtesy.
Now, even when we say professional, what is the expectation there?
Well, I don't know if you heard the conversation we were having, and
I'm sorry, I did.
I was saying, I've been out of law enforcement for a long time, and it was professional to use. They used to call it a command voice, a command presence. When you're dealing with a violent suspect or someone who refuses to follow your directions before they got a gun in their hand and they haven't pointed it at you yet, but before you shoot them, you may have to say some words or something like that to let them know that you're serious about this. When they assume that you are soft, you're a young officer, or you've never fired a gun before in an ill will way, and so they're a two-time loser, and they're not going back, and they're not going to get that third strike. So but Brian says no, things has changed, and so I'm going with Captain Hubbard. So
Yeah.
All right, I think Phil.
In my day, if you use profanity in that situation, nobody would be upset with you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. But you'd have to articulate that.
Look, GD.
You couldn't go around calling somebody who jaywalked, out of the name or something like that. It would have to be a circumstance like I tried to describe.
Righty.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Very minor change here. This was discussed when I was not here a couple weeks ago, but for 31439, this is performance of duty planning evidence. We added this definition. This includes, but is not limited to, got rid of intentional, the act of placing, fabricating, or manipulating evidence at a crime scene, on a suspect, or among. And then we got rid of suspects' possessions and we replaced it with one's possession. So it could be a victim, witness, just a person. One's possessions to falsely implicate the individual or alter the course of an investigation. So we removed suspect right here.
That's good.
We removed intentional because we couldn't think of a time that it would be
Yeah.
unintentionally plant evidence, right? Or,
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you did it.
Right.
that looks good to me.
Compromising criminal cases, there are no, oh, I should say this, I'll highlight this. Members and employees shall not use their authority to interrupt, attempt to interrupt, or improperly influence the legal process, engage in any activity. We got rid of with the intent that interferes with the criminal investigation, charging, or prosecution of any case. Looking through my notes here, we got rid of this just because I think we want to use the reasonableness standard here. It's like an officer just says, well, I made that phone call or I accessed this report and I gave it to this person, but my intent was something else, then they can escape this section versus what would a reasonable person think in this situation based on your actions. And then refuse to cooperate with an official criminal investigation upon direction of a competent department authority.
How would you factor in somebody who's working 901 undercover or something?
What is 901?
Well, say that somebody's working undercover and they, in order to convince the people that he's working, that he's with them, he brings some information, and that's part of the strategy, to bring some information that they think is that would help them or hurt someone else in the criminal investigation.
So in that example, it would be an undercover officer who's using their authority to hurt the investigation or help the investigation, where they're
no, to appear like he's hurting the investigation. So then he therefore will have the trust of the suspects that he's after. The appearance of hurting me, look, I'm giving you this information, so now you trust me.
Well, but by doing so, you're actually helping the investigation. So you wouldn't be compromising. But I understand what you're saying is
yes. But somebody could come in and argue, look, man, this guy gave out some information that he shouldn't have given out. Well, unless, I guess what I want to put in, unless working undercover or unless working in a clandestine fashion, these bullet points should apply.
Okay. This won't be the final product. I'll just bookmark it here just so I know to go back, kind of word this better. I mean, it can cut both ways. So I got to be careful here because I can also nefariously, as an undercover officer, use that as leverage to legitimately compromise the case for my own good. So I got to find a balance for both.
Well, none of this stuff is absolute. Everything is going to have an investigation, and it's going to be, most of it's going to be subjective. There's an argument is going to have to be made. In these, all of this stuff is gray to me.
Yeah, let me do some work on that, but that's interesting.
A guy plants evidence. He said, "Look, it fell out of my pocket."
Right.
Yeah, they're going to say that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And it's going to be upon the prosecution to prove that no, what he did was with the goal of interrupting and influence a legal process.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Great. I'll work on that and come back to that. 37090. This was endorsements and referrals, fee is exchange. So I know we had a lot of questions on this, and I did some research, and there are indeed 3 city policies that cover this also to give us better context. So I wrote these in here just as notes, but then I'll give you my new definition that I wrote. So the first one is Oakland Government Ethics Act. This is chapter 2.25 in the municipal code. Establishes standards of conduct for city officials and employees, emphasizing the importance of avoiding conflicts of interest and maintaining impartiality in official duties. Then you have the Public Ethics Commission Enabling Ordinance 2.24, empowers the Public Ethics Commission to oversee and enforce ethical standards within the city, ensuring that all employees adhere to established ethical guidelines. And then the city resolution 7307 outlines the expected behavior of city council members, promoting integrity, transparency, and accountability in all actions. So that gives you kind of an understanding of what this section's about. And then, so the new one that I wrote here that's a little bit more clear. Members and employees are prohibited from suggesting, recommending, advising, or otherwise offering counsel regarding the procurement of any specific product, service, or professional provider, regardless of whether compensation or fees are exchanged. This policy aligns with the City of Oakland's ethical standards as outlined in the Oakland Government Ethics Act 2.25 and ensures impartiality, avoids conflicts of interest, and upholds public trust. All personnel must maintain a neutral stance in their professional capacity to prevent any perception of favoritism, bias, or personal gain. I believe I've seen this once before in my career. It was a little bit more heavy than, let's say, that I'm just recommending one of my favorite restaurants. It was an employee who actually had a business in the city of Oakland, and there was some ethical crossover to his personal business and what he did here on the job. So that's the only time I think I've actually seen this in action. But otherwise, it's pretty rare that I would see this. Okay. Any questions on that section? Subversive organization. I didn't have anything here to change, so I think I'm just going to move on. I believe, yeah, well, I didn't have anything here.
Can I just look at it though for a second?
Yeah, certainly.
Excuse me.
So, our country has become, I don't know how to say this, but politically agitated or elevated or aggravated. I don't know how to say it. Will that determination of what a subversive organization is be the sole responsibility of and who is it when we say the Oakland Police Department will determine, will be subversive by the Oakland Police Department? Who is that?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And right now there is no one or even a list. And I believe the last time we talked about this, it also changes. I mean, it can be a subversive organization can form overnight. And I mean, and so I read this as if the investigation by the Oakland Police Department, you can throw on the CPRA also, uncovers the fact that this is subversive and you're involved, then you would be sustained for this. But it would require, I think, an investigation and an argument, because one can say, hey, it's my constitutional right to be part of this group.
Yeah, I mean, MAGA is getting, increasingly violent, in my opinion. Of course, you shouldn't belong to the Ku Klux Klan or any organization like that. Support or gang involved in illegal. Can we say known or suspected of? Somehow we got to have a more definitive. We're so splintered in this country now, and there's so much violence.
If we add known, we have to add them both, known and or suspected.
Yes, yes.
And I don't have a problem with having known there, but and we ought to be suspected by whom?
Yeah, well, that's why I said by the Oakland Police Department.
Yes.
Who is that? What is that? Who in the IAD or?
Well, I think
the chief or what?
It should be the Oakland Police Department, and I think somewhere in here it did talks about the chief. Now the police is the designated authority, so that clears that up. But we ought to add, like Hubbard said, the oversight committee.
CIPRA, yeah.
Yeah, it can't just be OPD.
No.
The district attorney's office ever determine what a subversive organization is, or they help classify like gangs or things like?
No, I know the FBI does. I mean, other law enforcement bodies will bring attention to it, but it's even hard, like even in the criminal world, the burden of proof is on the department to argue that one is part of a gang.
Exactly.
Like looking for enhancement. So if you can imagine now you have an officer, a member, say, I'm part of this motorcycle club. What's the problem?
The DA ought to be left out of it, because it ought to be, everybody's innocent to proven guilty. So they should be left out of it. But
are there certain litigative processes though that post conviction, post enhancement, that it's like, okay, this went through those channels and this is now designated as a subversive organization, or so if anybody ever gets caught up with this again, but I guess again, it's on a case-to-case basis, because just because I joined this biker club, I didn't know that this other nefarious dark corner existed, right? I mean, I would have to get proof that I had knowledge of that and I was partaking on behalf and for the benefit of that organization.
It seems to me they should, whatever this group is, should be judged on, their behavior, their writings, their
your social media presence will also tell you who these people are.
Their stated goals. It has to be their behavior, their communication, their stated goals or whatever.
Yeah, objectives.
I see where you're going with the chief of police, CIPRA, or designated authority based on established set of like we're trying to, but it feels like there's just something missing there that establishes such illegal activity or behavior or patterns. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's when they use the law to say this guy's is a gang member, and they say, well, how do you know he's a gang member? They say, well, he has tattoos,
gang signs,
signs. This is what they say they're about. They're into extortion. We have cases where they've been involved in extorting people and etc. So we got to have some qualifiers like that for a group. Yeah, I'm just joining the motorcycle club. Yeah, but it's the Hells Angels, and they've been in shootouts with the police department. They've been in drug deals, convictions. They established gang in the, you know, in a state and national prison systems. So no, that's a subversive organization. And you can say the same kind of argument with the Ku Klux Klan, but something can pop up, you know, and like MS-13 popped up, you know.
But what about a cop that has a Black Lives Matter flag, and then cops saying, well, they've been known to do subversive stuff, or like try to, like, you know, based on law enforcement, they may perceive that as a subversive organization.
Well, they could perceive all they want. They have to prove it. They have to. You know, I've said this over and over. Find me one conviction where somebody who was part of Black Lives Matter got convicted for doing something illegal. It's just in the media, but there's no convictions. There literally is no conviction, but the average American thinks that Black Lives Matter is equal to the Black Panthers. And no.
Or some think that they were as bad as the January 6 people. Although I've never seen them tear up any federal building or trashed any.
Haven't thrown one Molotov cocktail.
Well, that's why it goes back to
but the FBI came out. The FBI came out and sent a letter. This was under the Trump administration. Sent a letter out to law enforcement saying Black Lives Matter is a subversive organization. And then when they were challenged on it, they had to take that down. They never said who gave the order to send it out.
I mean, I guess as I read this,
So
it probably needs to read something also just in general, like reasonably would bring disrepute to the department, because this almost seems like an after the fact thought, as in what we're trying to do is prevent people from joining a subversive organization or organizing one. I don't want them to say, well, I can do it up until the point where a chief or some other competent authority says it's subversive.
Designates it as a subversive, yeah.
I want to use a reasonable standards. Like if you're doing anything that's part of an organization that brings any disrepute to the department of the city of Oakland, or just the job, let's just keep
perceived it. Or even perceived.
No, before you get there, Brian, before you get to perceiving something that's going to embarrass the department of the city, it breaks the law.
So are we looking at
you involved with a group or an organization that is breaking, that is committing felonies?
No, that's
can't be a part of that group.
Of course, I think that's an obvious one. But what if I'm just engaging in what I say is free speech? It's not really breaking the law, but it's still.
No. The issue. Let's keep in it. We're talking about knowingly joining. You can't join the organization, that a group that breaks the law and that are committing felonies. You can't join that and then go on or embarrasses the police department or gives ill repute upon the city and all of that.
But it's also not only just only join, but it also says affiliate and or support.
Yes.
And what does support mean?
Well,
like on social media,
I say
give a donation money,
showing up at the station with a T-shirt on saying, let's assassinate Berkeley cops. It's just a joke.
Kill our cops. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I like the Hells Angels. That's a good example because it's been proven and known for decades now that they've been involved in pretty sketch stuff, right? So like we're asking officers to have a level of common sense as well, to say, hey, we know this is a known organization, has been determined to be subversive. We can't affiliate, we can't hang out. Let's say I'm a cop and I have a cousin that's a Hell's Angel, right?
Right.
I'm not gonna, yeah, I could go and barbecue with him every Friday night, Saturday night, and not be a Hell's Angel, not have anything to do with them, and just be like, hey, but that's my cousin, right? But you have to have the common sense to know, well, that just might be my cousin. I might not be a Hell's Angel, but if I'm hanging out here every Friday night, there's going to be a general perception, or it's going to be that I am associating or affiliating myself or supporting this organization, whether I'm a part of it or not, right? And I think that's where we want cops to be forward thinking.
And that's not a great leap for most officers. Once they get sworn in, they know there's certain friends they gotta stop being friendly with. You know, it happens.
We're getting at with this, right? I mean, is that the intent of this?
How is that question asked in background investigation on candidates for being a police officer?
Well, I mean, they flat out ask if you're part of a gang. I don't think they use the word subversive, but then they also require them to produce pictures, or we actually take pictures of their tattoos, and we scour at what we can scour through their social media looking for such things.
Well, I think the precedent has already been set. You know, that this is the expectation upon you being hired. Otherwise, you would not have been hired. Maybe we ought to somehow put that in, include that in there.
Huh. Like,
see,
with whatever
sometimes we try to write
in the first place.
Yeah, but they ask those questions on background investigations, and if they ask them on backgrounds post hiring, then the precedent has been set. And so we ought to be able to say, look, you can't knowingly join, affiliate, or support any known and suspected organization or gang that has been involved in criminal or illegal activity or deemed subversive, no, or legal activity, and then put some IEs in there, like Ku Klux Klan, Hell's Angels, any group that want to overthrow the government. Because you took an oath, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, this thing can get kind of long, but it's probably better being long than short. So everybody can understand what we're trying to say.
Oh, I mean, without naming the agency, there's an agency in Southern California that's being looked at right now, or it's in the news, but for this,
it's all over. You don't have to say it. We know who it is.
Okay, so I mean, I might need to just look at what they're doing there, and the other
they're
thing,
not doing anything. They're denying that they have a problem.
The other thing I was looking at
involved now, right? And
it is, yeah, it's
they're denying that they have a problem.
I've lost my audio.
No, we hear you.
She don't hear us. Can you hear us now?
The one thing I was looking up as she gets her sound fixed is I don't know if you remember this, but at Deacon Lyles, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The officers who like to make their own T-shirts and hats that have a emblem of their unit. So in Detroit years ago, they accidentally killed an underage girl, and when they went to trial, they showed all of their little emblems and T-shirts. It's like, hey, you say this is a mistake, but you're advertising how you're going out there and inflicting harm on the community based on how you brand your unit. That's probably fits in a different section, probably not subversive, but we're along the same lines where it could be construed as such.
And I like to get rid of all of it.
Yeah,
I mean, the famous one in my time was the O.J. Simpson trial, and the guy, he started this group in LAPD, Men Against Women, when women were coming in and they were getting tattoos, MAW on their ankles.
Yeah.
So these kind of little subgroups and cults do pop up. So we need to write something, that has a foreshadowing, a warning to any future behavior like this.
And that's, I'm guessing, is the straightforward intent of this MOR, it sounds like.
Yes.
I love that the point that you made about the background checks. It's kind of like anything that you wouldn't do to clear that background check, don't do it now that you're on board.
That's right.
You know, like just because now you're on board doesn't mean you can do it now, right? Like if it would have been a disqualifier for to get on the force, then you have no business doing that while you're on the force.
Exactly, and I think that you would not get any pushback from the police association about this because it's already established.
Is there a way to put like as established by background check criteria to even,
that's what I was suggesting. Yes,
something like that, because then you're right, because it ties it back to what the standard of what was held for you to even join the department.
We're being consistent, and so this section gets longer, but it's more definitive and more clear.
Correct.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm gonna grab a glass of water real quick.
Sure.
Cough that's lingering.
Marsha, are you back? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm sorry. I'm
okay, when you said I lost the audio, we could hear you, but you couldn't hear us, I guess.
Okay. We're good now, I suspect.
Okay.
Yes,
We are.
you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay.
So watch what you say when you lose the audio.
Yes, sir. That tongue is a really bad little thing, isn't it? Okay.
Deacon,
moving on.
may I ask, when in your law enforcement career, have you seen this before, this section?
No, because and I think that's how all these things came into fruition, because we did not have a section like this. What they were arguing then was free speech.
Yeah.
They, and they were saying, look, I'm a police officer, but I'm a citizen of the United States. So, as long as I'm not bringing this on the job, but that's exactly what they did, was bring this kind of stuff on the job, and became small little cult groups within an agency.
It reminds me of, I think it was Vallejo PD that was bending their badges every time they killed somebody or something like that. And I know LA County Sheriff's Department has quite a bit of a problem with like all these skull and bone tattoos and their little, I forgot what they call themselves over there. But I'm also thinking like, oh man, I just lost.
And then when Digicom first came in and people didn't know how it actually worked, and they thought when they hit erase, it meant erase.
Yeah.
But they were saying all kind of stuff that they said normally to one another, and all of that was recoverable. And so we've evolved to this kind of section. So let's write it good. Let's don't be parse on the words. Let's include what we want. And let's go for that.
I also want to be sensitive, and I'm wondering how often this occurs in the department is, we don't control who our family is, right? We all have interesting people in our families, right? And so I'm also wondering, like, if you have an officer or a lieutenant, even maybe a high-ranking officer, maybe a captain or a chief or somebody that's like, you have a brother that's maybe committing criminal or is involved in a gang, right? And it's like, you're not going to cut your family off. You're going to still check on them. You're still going to be a part of their life, right? Obviously your own personal preference, right? But that doesn't you also have to be mindful that you also don't conflate your familial relationship with then now, I'm going to go visit my brother with him and a bunch of his homies at the homies. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be cognizant of that, right? I mean, like, I'm sure folks, there's some common sense around that, right? And so,
yes.
I'm also wondering, like, within this paragraph, like, I don't know, I just want to be sensitive that, like, we're not telling you to like cut off family or a friend. You might have a childhood friend that may have certain associations, and I might go check on him every now and then, right? as long as I'm not like hanging out with him on a regular basis where it could get perceived as I'm associated with this organization, right? I don't know, man. I could imagine like somebody, member from the public saying, "Hey, I'm filing a complaint because I saw this person hanging out with this gang member," and it's just like, no, that's my brother. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to.
Well, I think they have a right to file a complaint. I think that once they file a complaint and somebody looks into it and they say, "Yeah, that's my brother," and
but you see, that's the thing.
We had a family
we
dinner.
have to be, yeah, but outside of those family gatherings, once you become an officer, once you become a member of the court, your life does change in some very real ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had a relative who had a run-in with the police, and it was difficult, but I couldn't represent him like he wanted. I'm a member of a government agency that, you know, wouldn't allow me to get involved, but it changes your life. It changes who you can hang with, who you can associate with. And that just comes with the territory. But yeah, you know, Thanksgiving, and my relative who has engaged in criminal conduct is there. I'm going to greet her, and recognize that there are now new parameters around that relationship. That you have to be wise about that and knowing about that.
And we want officers thinking about that, forward thinking,
yeah,
identifying that, and then acting proactively in that manner, right?
And the classic case of what we're talking about here was the Whitey Bulger case in Boston, Massachusetts, in the Winter Hill gang. His brother was a state senator, and you know, he was you know, the FBI was protecting him, and he was out killing folks. Gang was killing folks, and you know, he was on a run for a long time. So, you know, this, everybody knows about this kind of scenario in law enforcement. I don't think it's a big thing for every officer to understand. You can have a brother that's doing whatever, that's his business. You better have your business, and it ought to be a firewall between them.
Yeah, you know, once my relative, for instance, starts dealing drugs, that's a problem.
Right.
Okay, so are we going to move on from this?
So Byron's going to do more work on this, right?
Yep, I am. Yep, I'm going to do some more research and come up with something better.
Okay.
Give some examples.
Yep, certainly. 39870, the only change we made for this is it says CPRB, changed it to CPRA.
Yeah.
For retaliation, I didn't have any new, or we didn't have any new updates from this. I'll give you a chance to read it, however.
Well, isn't there a new law that requires that members, I thought there was some legislation. Is this the one where you see another officer engaging in misconduct and you report it, and you shouldn't be retaliated against because of that? And or is this the whistleblowing thing? What is this one addressing?
So this is specific to having an adverse response to something a member did. Your question is in the same family. It's the duty to intervene, and then you're prohibited then from retaliating for intervening. So it would actually be two different manual of rules violations. So let's say I intervene because there's misconduct, okay, and then, or if I fail to, whatever that may be, that's one section. And then if there's a retaliation claim on top of that because of that, I would get this section also.
I see.
But I will look into that and ensure that these things are synced up.
Yeah, it's some sort of cross-reference because we had a discipline committee committee on an officer, rookie officer, who didn't report the training officer for some misconduct. And of course, that was the end of that. We don't know if she was or he was retaliated against for, well, he or she did not report the officer. So it's this last one. Any member or employee who becomes aware of such conduct shall immediately report. That's the one that tripped up the rookie. They didn't report it.
For retaliation, they knew of retaliation, they didn't report it?
Well, we didn't get to retaliation. It was not reported that the training officer had engaged in misconduct. So I don't know that there was any retaliation, but this is where that would come up, I guess.
Sure.
That's
Yeah, well, specific to retaliation, but there is a section that, failure to report misconduct. So if regardless of what the misconduct is, you have a different section. So this one is just if it emphasizes that really, where not only are we condemning you retaliating, but also you also need to be aware of retaliation and report it if you do become aware.
In general, whether or not it's against you, but it could be against anyone else.
That's right.
I see. Okay. Yeah, you guys have got a lot of stuff going on in this matrix.
But I will look into this, ensure that it does sync up with the law, because there might be some legislation I'm not referring to here specific to that.
Yeah, I believe there is some new legislation that something speaks to officers reporting and not being retaliated against for reporting misconduct.
Okay.
So I would appreciate you checking that out.
Will
And
do.
what is this next meeting for December? That's us now,
I'd
right?
say these are my notes, so I wanted to make sure
Is this where we're supposed to really be starting here?
Kind of. There were some changes from the last meeting. I'm a little bit off my pace because I wasn't in the meeting before last, and last week's meeting got canceled because of the holidays. So I did make a note though. So my note taker did report that these sections in red were okay. We do remember this. So we did talk about prohibited activity, on duty, specific sexual activity. This is a true story. After we got off the phone or off of our meeting from 3 weeks ago, I went through and I found this section, which is conduct towards others' relationships. Members and employees shall not inappropriately convert or attempt to convert an on-duty contact into an intimate relationship. This probably would have cut out probably 20 minutes of our discussion, but this section does address the creepy asking for a phone number while you're on a yes.
Thank you. Because I asked Regina, is she still a member of our ad hoc? Well, I told her, I said, this is what happened. And she didn't side with me. She gave me an instance where it happened to her and how upset she was. And so I said, yeah, we're kind of going back and forth about this, but thank you. Yeah. Who are you today? Are you captain for sure?
Acting captain today, yes.
Oh man, still acting. You got my vote to be permanent.
Thank you.
But okay, so Thank you, Acting Captain Hubbard, for researching and finding this.
Thank you. I will go back though to 32807 and I'll put that on the screen because I think we were talking about this, but we didn't really resolve it. Give me 1 second. 32807. Members and employees are prohibited from engaging in the following activities while on duty, and then sexual activity. And I think we wanted to expand on that because it's in the same, other bullet points include sleeping, loafing, idling, conducting private business, carrying of articles not associated with the performance of police duties, or gambling unless to further a police purpose, which is interesting. But the sexual activity, it doesn't expand at all. It just says prohibited from engaging in sexual activity. So I think the conversation was, what does that really mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we weren't talking about sexual harassment within the department. Like, you get one chance to say to another officer or employee within the department, hey, can I take you to dinner? And he or she says no. And you get that one pass. Or commenting on someone's, oh, you look really nice today. And someone says, I'd appreciate it if you would not address me on that personal level. And if they continue, if they do it again, that's sexual harassment.
There you go.
But this is the one we were concerned about. So thank you.
Yeah, so I think the key word there is inappropriately. Now, to me, I think regardless if it's wanted by the other party, I think if an officer really takes advantage of a witness or victim or suspect in that matter, I think that inherently is inappropriate. Here you have a person who is in this vulnerable situation and they give you your phone number because they have to for this investigation. And I then ask, hey, is it okay if I call you? Even though that may seem like a very non-threatening request, I just think that it's just inappropriate in that circumstance.
Yeah. I called you about the stolen bike, not for a date in the future.
And we do have incidents like that.
I think I was the one that was pushing back on that. And I was saying, I agree with you that, it's probably inappropriate. It doesn't belong here. It should only be a violation if it's a second act. Because, how you came about somebody's phone number, is part of the First Amendment. I mean, you were told it doesn't mean you have to not remember it. And if
you don't know, Reg, because this is a part of an official investigation. It's not your personal First Amendment right to my phone.
Remember?
Have my right to the
phone. It is
number.
My personal, Marcia, it is my personal right to remember. I can remember things. You can't say.
But you better not act on it and give me a call.
If I act on it, I have a right as an adult to call another adult and say, listen, I'd like to talk to you further on a private matter. Can we have coffee? No, don't ever call me again. Click. Now if I call a second time, I'm dead.
314.07 says you cannot do that. And I like it.
I think that's wrong. I think what you're doing is setting people up to be caught all the time. You're in a business, in a building where men and women who are not married engage. Most people get married, let me finish, from people who they work with or associated with or in a reasonable proximity.
this is not that sexual harassment section. There is that section, and that's why I said you get one time to ask me out, and I say no. If you come back again, that's a violation. This one talks about converting an on-duty contact, and I am assuming on-duty contact means with the public, to an intimate relationship. That's different than what you're talking about.
Okay.
It is.
Has someone ever been brought up on charges about this? Making a phone call to someone?
Yes. And so well, I can't say too much, but on the other end of that is the person who was asked for their phone number thought it was inappropriate. So they're the one who made the allegation. The officer came to my house. I'm a victim. The officer asked if they can give me a call. I thought it was inappropriate. This section applies.
Yep. And that's different than the one where we are working together and I'm on the 5th floor, you're on the 3rd floor. We see each other in the elevator and you say, oh, where do you work? Oh, I'm on the 5th floor. Oh, I'm on the 3rd floor. Maybe we could meet for coffee on the 2nd floor. And you say, no, thank you. Please don't, ask me to do that. I'm not interested. Then I see you again the next week and you say, have you reconsidered? I really would like to have that coffee with you and maybe dinner. That's the sexual harassment. That's wrong. That's where you're going to get in trouble.
I think he's setting these officers up to be wrong all the time. If you're out there in them streets driving in them police cars, you got women approaching you all the time. You're laughing, Brian. You're laughing, but I'm just being honest. Listen, I'm being honest and practical. It happens.
Okay.
It happens.
Well, I would say that is more consensual, but if I call you about my bicycle being stolen, I give you my phone number, don't you call me and ask me for a date.
Well, that's you, but that doesn't mean everybody is like you. And I'm saying that's why it should be one bite and that's it. You made the phone call. Hey, listen, I don't appreciate it. I
would never want to call the police about anything again if that were the way they would approach it. Honestly. And maybe because I live alone and I think that they're more my protector than they are my potential date. But I'm glad you found this.
But I know this happens all the time, and it's not going to stop happening because you're dealing with young men and young women in society, and that's how things happen. So, okay, all right.
Well, let me simplify it a little bit more, though, just to clarify. So this is not a self-discovered allegation, as in I have not ever watched body-worn camera footage and seen an officer commit this. This is usually, or I would say 100% of the time, is coming from an actual person who's on the other end of that request who thought it was inappropriate.
So what do you guys do when that happens? You investigate, you find out, the guy comes in, yeah, I made a phone, yeah, I called her, and and then, hey, you get a warning, right?
Yeah, this would be considered a minor offense, if you will, but the crux of this entire section would be, was it inappropriate? And to me, I mean, this is where subjectivity comes in, and maybe we should stop here and actually develop this more, because if I'm engaging someone in a vulnerable position, I should not, like a victim, I should not be asking for their phone number. However, going back to, and this has never happened to me in my career, a woman stopping me saying that, hey, you're a police officer, I want your number, or vice versa. But let's just say I'm driving down the street and I see, hey, I want to ask her out. She's not a victim, witness, suspect, nothing. Is that okay? Is that okay to then, is that considered inappropriate? Right. What's that?
That might be a little different.
I think
when I say convert an on-duty conduct tag, I was I was thinking it had to do with, you know, some official, I called you, you come out, this is what we're discussing, not you cruising down, you know, Park Boulevard and you see me jogging and you say, ooh, that looks good from behind. But it looks like from the front.
So something that
I'm gonna
was,
pull over.
so basically because I was obtained during the course of being on duty, to the course of your work, right? In your professional
Yeah.
capacity, you obtain that information.
Right.
You can't then use it in a personal manner, something.
Right.
Now, but I guess what I'm hearing though too, like let's say I just got off and I'm in my uniform and I'm on my personal time now, we're heading home, and I make eye contact and it's love at first sight, right? Then it's like, you know, that I wasn't obtaining or initiating that discussion under my professional capacity, under an investigation or responding to a call of service, or you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
I'll give you all an example. I I interviewed one time. I conducted an interview, and I had a fellow direct report that was part of the interview process take the number from the resume, and because the person was not offered the job, they thought, oh, they're not working here, I could just take this number and give them a call and say, hey, would you like to hang out? That person filed a complaint on my staff, and guess what? I fired him on the spot.
Hey, I yield.
Sure you did. I'm sure you did.
Because it breaks trust, it breaks the vulnerability, it's the repute on the organization, like all these same reasons that we're talking about now, right? And
Right.
you were not given consent to obtain that number for personal reasons. You obtained that information from
Correct.
your professional capacity, then used it for
Right.
your personal
And
reasons.
that's all
I think
I'm
that's the
saying.
spirit of this. Yeah.
Yeah. I called you by my bike. Okay, guys.
I was well, okay. I didn't go to the files to get your number. I remembered your number. And you're actually saying you don't have a right to remember things. And if
No,
you
I'm
remember
saying that
things,
even if
let me
you
finish.
remembered it,
If you remember things, you cannot act upon it. I
you
remembered
got
your
it.
phone number. I waited and I thought I'd give you a call, and you said, take a long walk off a short pier, and I never called you again. And then the person came in and said, this guy called me, and well, did he go into the Digicom? Because they have a record of that. To get your number? No. He remembered the number. And he says, no, I remember the number. And I did call her. And Captain Hubbard is saying, okay, that's sustained, but we'll give you counseling or talk to you about it because it's minor. Okay, I'm with that. Long as somebody's not losing their job or losing days off work for young men being young men and young women being young women. These police officers aren't robots. They're human.
They can remember it. They can write it down. They only got it because of their on-duty official contact with me. And that is a no-no. I don't care if you wrote it down or if you remembered it. You only got it due to your on-duty official contact. And you should not try to convert it to an intimate relationship. Okay, can we go on?
I enjoyed the conversation. We can go back up to.
Are you eating popcorn over there? Oh, okay. What's next?
Do we want to talk about this section, prohibited activity on duty, specific to sexual activity? So this is what caused this conversation, but we didn't really go into what sexual activity actually means. Keep in mind that we're still working with OIG and the city attorney's office on a sexual misconduct policy. But all it says here is sexual activity. That's it. It doesn't define what that means.
And then theoretically, would this refer back to that sexual misconduct policy that you are working on?
That's my hope. And so let's just use an example of if an officer was looking at pornography on duty, is that sexual activity?
Yes.
Yes.
I would agree. And so that's what I'm thinking through. It's like we know the known ones where you're engaged in some type of sexual act, but what if it's nothing physical, or it's looking at pornography, or I don't know if I can think of anything else, but you get what I'm saying.
No, you you know, again, there's laws against satisfying oneself in public.
Yeah.
You know, that folks do that in cars. And we do have deviants who do that, while they're watching women walk down the street. And so that also would be sexual activity. I think catcalling out of a car, whistling at some woman walking down the street, making comments about body parts, to somebody, in public, while on duty, etc. All that to me is sexual activity.
Here's what the Google says. Sexual activity is a broad term that refers to any physical or psychological action that involves sexual arousal, desire, and satisfaction. It can be solitary, between two people, or in a group.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
If somebody's walked down the street, woo, hey, no, that's
sexual activity refers to any physical activity that involves touching someone else's private parts, such as breast, vagina, penis, or anus. This can include sexual intercourse or any other sexual acts that do not necessarily lead to intercourse. I think Google has it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll probably
use that one.
then.
I say use that one.
Okay.
Okay. This section
I'll give you another fun example of another person out of fire.
Uh-oh, where you been working?
Hey, 25 years running nonprofits, you see all kind of shit, man. And
oh Lord.
there's one guy he goes and closes a door into his private office and calls his girlfriend, and they're having this
phone
sexual conversation, sexting, and talking about all the things they're going to do later on with each other that night. But the walls are thin, and we have colleagues that could hear them in the next office next door.
Mm.
So they filed a complaint, and he thought, hey, I was in my private office, I closed my door. But the fact that
there's no expectation of privacy,
and he was on the clock, on duty, right? And just the mere fact that others heard him and filed a complaint, that he was responsible for that and had to,
well, I'm glad you fired him, but
times have changed now. When you're managing an organization, now times have changed. There's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of things where there's no exceptions now.
If you're in your office with your door closed, there is an expectation of privacy. But by the same token, by law,
that's not
the same token, you cannot have any sexual act in your office while on duty.
Yeah.
But there's an expectation of privacy, because I know when I would shut my door every time somebody came in, because if the door is open, they can record you, they can do all kind of stuff. But if your door is closed, that's an expectation of privacy.
it's like anything that is owned by your employer that you have been allowed to use, there is no expectation of privacy. They have a right to enter. They have a right to search. It's not like you at your home or your apartment with your landlord.
Now I'm talking about the
It's a-
conversation that goes on. If you're on a private conversation on the phone and your door is open, there's no expectation of privacy. But if your door is closed, there is.
You might subjectively think that, but under the law, there isn't.
Well, I have to
So
respectfully.
you got to be careful with that. What you say, what you do, all of that.
Key is when on duty, when on the clock.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll probably add this a little bit more to that. And then this section continues. The next one is sleeping, loafing, or idling. Any challenges with that?
What is loafing?
Not doing anything, being lazy. Yeah. I mean, that's the subjective, like, what does that really mean? Sometimes I just need to take a break and people catch me just looking out my window. So one can argue that I'm loafing in that situation, but sometimes I just need to give my brain a break.
I stand corrected.
Thank you.
Well, I'm big enough to say so.
Okay. Because I was about ready to call you, private. You have an expectation of privacy when you close that door. His problem was he was so loud that it came through the wall.
Yeah, a person's home and the areas immediately surrounded it, an office, even if it's shared by others.
But the deal is you got to have the door closed. You can be in a car with your windows down. You have no expectation of privacy if somebody hears what's going on. But if the windows are rolled up, you have an expectation of privacy, especially in California. Now, if you're in Washington, D.C., that's something different. You don't. That's how, what's her name that got involved with Bill Clinton got in trouble for recording.
Oh, Monica Lewinsky?
Recording.
Monica Lewinsky?
Yeah, she recorded a conversation and they said, well, hey, that was a private conversation. Well, in DC, there is no expectation of privacy, but in California, there is.
Oh, it's state generated. Well, okay.
Yeah. Conducting private business. One thing I do want to add to this is probably social media. We do get some, and it's usually self-discovered. Officers have their body-worn camera on. And as you know, it's in buffer. There's a buffer that has no sound to it, but it records everything 30 seconds back from when you actually press the button to go live. So I've seen officers, they're looking at social media, appropriate social media, and then they're getting out of the car to go to a call for service. And that personally, it bothers me if I, walking by and I see an officer on social media, assuming it's not work related, I would be pretty perturbed by that.
Like, why are you loafing around, man?
Yeah.
Social media.
Right. So, I mean, it kind of fits within the same family, even for conducting private business. I mean, I think even conducting private business can be a little excessive because, if a family member calls me, we can reasonably accept that's a, private call, and it's okay to answer those occasionally. You just can't occupy your time where someone else is suffering because of it. Carrying of articles not associated with the performance of police duties. This is, I think, an older way of saying you cannot read personal books or articles, magazines, things like that. It needs to be work related. I remember them teaching us in the academy. This is before really the internet. They used to give us all the policies in big binders, and they said that's the only thing you're allowed to carry around are these things. You cannot read a book or anything else that takes away from your job. And then gambling, unless to further a police purpose.
That's the
What
part.
is gambling? Gambling.
That's
when
the
it's
phrase I was trying to get at. Furthering a police purpose, about the other thing we were talking about. Maybe furthering a police purpose is a clause that you want to add to the one before. Yeah, that gambling is serious.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh yeah, we've had guys that would catch a plane out of Oakland and fly up to Tahoe to gamble all night, then come back to work.
Mm.
On duty, they would do that?
No, they
Oh.
would get
Clock
off
out?
duty,
Okay.
catch a plane,
Yeah.
gamble all night, catch another plane, come back to work the next day, no sleep.
That's
Mm.
an
Yeah,
that's an addiction.
yeah, degenerates. Yeah,
Okay.
So you wouldn't say gambling or other addictive behavior unless to further a police purpose. Gambling
you know the reason why
in these
gambling is
circumstances
the
seems
reason
to
why
be
the reason why gambling is so is there is because people can get their hooks into you. You can say, officer, you owe us, $50,000. So I want to know when the police are going to be at this location or not, because that's when we're going to do whatever we're going to do that's illegal. So you don't want our police officers owned by mafias or subversive groups or gangs.
But could this also be an officer who has an addiction problem?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's even probably worse now because you can go online and do it, and so it's just merely on their phone. And
No, I
again,
mean addiction to a
Methamphetamine or whatever. That's probably going to be someplace else.
substance.
Yeah, substance abuse.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. This is prohibited activity on duty. The idea behind this section is you're not doing something on duty that's taking away from doing your job. So surfing the internet, for example, would fit into this category because you're goofing off, basically. Reading a book that you shouldn't be reading because you're not doing your job. And I mean, that's where social media, I think, really comes into play because, yeah, it is an addiction, but it just, whatever takes away from your job on duty would fall into this.
So surfing the internet would be sleeping, loafing, idling, surfing the internet or something like that.
Yeah, or conducting private business to include, or social media use,
Yes.
personal social media use, and then surfing the internet, et cetera. Sure.
Yeah. However you describe, you know, you shouldn't be on. So, updating this, I guess we should be cognizant that social media might be one of these things, however you want to, wherever you want to put it. But you need to add social media.
Yeah. Off duty. I mean, there is a time where on duty social media is acceptable because it sometimes furthers investigations, certainly, but
Sure.
gaming has been a problem also, not just gambling, just, online games, things like that can be,
Fantasy football, man. It's
Yep.
huge.
Yep.
Okay.
Fantasy football. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll develop that section more. This next one, all I had in my notes.
Do you need to put a yellow something somewhere so you remember, or you're going to remember?
I have my notepad here that you don't see on camera that I've been writing down. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
I just know my memory's so bad.
Yeah, no, me too. I have a lot of notebooks here to my right hand side. This one, the only note that I have from 2 weeks ago that I wasn't here, it just says need to discuss further. So this is 35630. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to skip over these things. These are just things that we haven't discussed yet. So I know to come back to these, but the ones in red are the ones that were highlighted. Accessing, viewing, downloading, providing, sharing inappropriate material. Members and employees shall not intentionally access, view, download, provide, or share inappropriate material while on duty or in a police facility, except in the performance of an official police task. I'm not sure what was discussed, but this was.
I wasn't at this where this was discussed, but why is it just while on duty? You shouldn't be doing these things maybe that are inappropriate. Is it inappropriately accessing, viewing, downloading, providing, sharing?
No,
Should inappropriate be at the very beginning?
well, I'm reading, this is literally how it's written now, so that's what we can discuss. It does say sharing inappropriate material.
To your point, Marcia, the on duty thing, I think that was a little bit of what we discussed because I think we talked a little bit about like the Antioch police and they were sharing a bunch of inappropriate text messages, racist text messages, stuff like that, right? And some of that stuff was not on duty either, I believe. So is it only on
Yes,
duty?
it doesn't have to be while on duty.
This is under the section that's titled Communications Correspondence Electronic Media.
Hmm. Is there another policy that covers when folks are not on duty? Is that just like repute?
I mean, you certainly have a criminal element there if it is, but you know, like if
This is sharing inappropriate material, not inappropriately accessing, viewing, or downloading material. So,
quite the way I look at it is like pornography. If you're on duty and you download pornography, and whether you share it or not, that's one, and then sharing it on duty would be another. But necessarily off duty, that wouldn't be a violation.
I see.
Even if you're sharing inappropriate racist messages, let's say.
Can
Well,
you do that off duty? Is there some?
no, I would argue that no, I would say that's different. That crosses the line. I don't know if you can hide under the First Amendment for something like that.
Yeah, because that Antioch case, though, right? All those text messages and all the department members that got in trouble with that. Was it? I thought it was both on duty and off duty messages that they were
Yeah,
sharing.
that's what I'm trying to understand. Why is it? It's wrong while on duty, but it's okay if it's off duty.
I mean, some things would be, but not the Antioch case. No.
Okay. I just think the way it reads here, somebody can interpret and say, "Well, I'm not on duty. I guess I can share this material." It's okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's where I'm stuck. But I know what he's saying. Captain Hubbard is saying, well, you can share porn while off duty, but this isn't just directed toward porn. What is the inappropriate material that you're targeting here? Because it's sharing inappropriate material, not the inappropriately accessing, viewing, downloading, providing, or sharing material. That's inappropriate. This one's got me a little confused, Captain Hubbard.
Yeah, there's nothing else, and that's why I think we should refine this, and we probably stop because it almost seems like while you're at work and using City of Oakland electronics, accessing, viewing, downloading, providing, sharing, inappropriate. That's how I read this.
And it can't just be, pornography.
Right.
It could be a dialogue between two officers about some untoward comments about a group of people or individual. That's an embarrassment.
Right.
like you said, like the Alameda, not the Alameda, but the Vallejo case. And prior to the Vallejo case, there was that Alameda case where they made those comments about gorillas in the mist and all of that. So it's not just sexually oriented materials. It's any racist, bigoted, homophobic.
But see, maybe that's what it is. It inappropriate
has to be defined.
Has to be defined.
Sexist, homophobic.
Didn't law enforcement get indicted in the January 6th case?
Pornographic.
The January, yes.
Did DOJ end up indicting other law enforcement officers involved in that were off duty at the time, or I remember there was some controversy around that. What didn't OPD wasn't there an officer that was like liking January 6th tweets or something like that?
Yeah, yes. There was an officer who was there, but he's been long gone. He's no longer an officer here when that incident happened. But yes,
gotcha.
Yeah, I can tell you, not in a different state up north, they had a problem with officers going to that, not on duty but off duty. But then you got into the argument over their free speech, and they're just demonstrating. They didn't necessarily storm the Washington, D.C. They just were there demonstrating, but they were there. Well, so I'm going to have to develop this more. As I read this, I think what they're trying to say is using City of Oakland databases or electronics to then download, share, and view, which could mean many things.
Like reports, addresses, whatever.
Yeah.
It's that, you can't give out people's addresses and phone numbers and all that stuff. That's not connected with the investigation. You can't, that's a criminal act. So.
Yeah, there's different sections that address that. I'm going to just have to do more work on this, because there is a section that talks about unauthorized use of electronic systems, which I think is more applicable, because what we're saying, it's like downloading an address wouldn't necessarily be inappropriate material as is defined here. So this is what I'm hung up on. It's like, what's inappropriate material?
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm going to have to work on this. This whole section is kind of weird. Even 356, like even now, of course, I think this is my MO, but 35680, which is not what you can see here, electronic telecommunication entertainment devices. They do have a section that talks specifically for entertainment type devices that you're using that will prevent you from doing your job. Television, DVD player, for those who still have those, video games, computer game systems. So, yeah, I need some more time on this one. I wish I had historical context for this section. I just don't have anything.
Well, Captain, I just can't wait till we have to update all of these MORs to incorporate the new developments in artificial intelligence and how that changes the game and everything. So that should be in the next couple of years.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So I think this is going to be a good place for us to stop. Were there any other, Captain, from the last couple of weeks that we had to go back? Let me see.
Yeah, all this.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, use of force, custody of prisoners, all right, so 15, 16, 18, and 19, we didn't even start to dive into. We just flagged
Right.
them as like those may take individual discussion, several
Yeah.
weeks of discussion each section, right? So we didn't even go into those areas.
Nope.
Unauthorized use of electronic systems. We might as well
Yeah.
just knock that out now. It looks like that's the last one of just kind of these simple ones, or unless you're saying this is a little more complicated too.
So the question you all pose is Lieutenant Durham to follow up on how long they can track for and what parts of the computer do the tracking when one logs in. What capabilities do they have and what exactly does it track? That was a question that was raised. I did not get a response yet from him.
And in all honesty, at that point I was at an art show at my daughter's high school taking that part of the call in a bathroom stall, and I really do not remember that part
I
of the
admire
conversation
your
at all.
devotion and dedication.
I was hiding in there. People were like, "What is he doing in there?" Yeah, maybe we touched back base with Durham around that. I don't remember what the conversation was around that one.
One of the I know kind of what it is. It's like, do our systems have auditing capabilities? And the answer is yes. So it's in that.
To like retroactively find misuse, or
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty significant audit trail. Like our body worn camera, for example. I mean, it's indefinite, and so you can tell if someone logs in and looks at something. Our CLET system, which tracks criminal activity, that's highly audited, not only just internally but with the Department of Justice. So those very sensitive systems do have tracking mechanisms for sure. And we do get these complaints. We have inappropriate access to electronic systems for whatever reasons, and it's not hard for us to find out who.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. But is there anything kind of left to kind of look into regarding that? I mean, that seems pretty straightforward.
I'll put it above the screen. It says it's pretty vague, as in unless authorized to do so. And I mean I can look at that more on its face. No, it's never really been an ambiguous issue. Because DOJ, for example, we have to take a test every year to make sure we understand it. And if it's not a need to know, right to know, then it's a pretty significant charge against someone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right.
So anyway, but I'll highlight this just to talk about it next time.
We have 2 meetings left before the end of the year. The last Wednesday of the month falls on Christmas Day, and I know we're not going to all want to be here on that day. So for the 11th and the 18th, you recommend we just start jumping into use of force? That seems like a long one, or is there a better one that maybe we could cover over the course of those 2 meetings? And we're gonna have to kind of
I think
some of these as well too that you were making edits on.
yeah, I mean we can go over the edits, but I think these 4 will take us definitely to the end of the year. I don't think, I mean, are we considering talking about the different levels of force or why?
You have to
You know
look
what?
at what.
Yeah,
what
I'll
that
explain it
is.
more next time we meet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll take too long.
Cool. So it sounds like we'll just keep on chugging along, and we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, sounds
weeks.
We knew this was going to take a while, so
yeah.
I'm in it.
Okay, great. Excellent.
And to you, while I see you, Chair, to your text to me, I am available most mornings.
Okay. Before 11 noon.
Yeah, before noon.
Okay. Great. I'll look at my calendar. We'll touch base.
Yeah. Okie doke.
Excellent.
So with that, I literally came in the house and turned on the computer, and I'd like to say goodnight.
Absolutely.
We'll
give you all a full 2 minutes
charming.
back of your time, but this does conclude our meeting. I totally forgot to check if we had any attendees in the audience, which luckily
No, we
we
do not.
did. And so
Oh, hi,
thank you,
Micah.
Hello, gorgeous.
Okay.
You look beautiful.
Oh, with the
I
wash
love
and
it.
go there.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah,
See, guys.
no one's been there the whole time, Chair.
Okay. Oh, that chair.
Bye. Bye.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful night. I
Bye-bye.
appreciate you all and your contributions. Take care.
Take care.